So, as we all know, moving in silence is the mantra that has been touting around this space and around the internet as a whole for the past couple years, I'd say. But what if I told you that your moving in silence method is a strategy that's actually only hurting you? And if it hasn't yet, it will keep you from getting opportunities and living the life you want by further isolating you from others. So let's start by defining some terms. As we all know, moving in silence is often hailed as a smart, strategic way to work hard without drawing attention to yourself. But if we peel back the layers, this approach means keeping every detail of your life hidden away. Yeah, it can create an aura of mystery and exclusivity, but when you never let anyone in, it can also come across as secretive and isolating. People simply can't relate to someone they know nothing about. So let's just think about some celebrity examples. The first person for me that comes to mind when I think about moving in silence is Beyonce. I'd say for the past 10 or so years, Beyonce has become kind of this untouchable, unreal kind of figure in pop culture. Like, yes, she is Beyonce and she's revered and respected, but she's not someone most people see as relatable. And I think this is part of the reason why, when she came out with her hair care line, nobody was really buying it. And by buying it, I mean monetarily, and nobody was really buying into it, into the brand. Beyonce, I think, made the mistake of not first building that authentic, genuine trust with her fans before coming out with a product. Because if you're a celebrity selling a product and you want it to do well and resonate, then I believe it needs to have one of two components. One, either the product has to be so good that no one cares who made it, or two, the celebrity it's attached to has a fan base willing to just buy the product because it's coming from that celebrity. So I think the former, just having a good product, will always be much easier and will have more longevity than just convincing an audience to buy it because it's coming from you. So the whole buy this because said celebrity slapped their name on it, that thing might have worked back in the day, but with the economic times we're in now, nobody's looking to buy things just because their favorite singer or actor slapped their name on it. So I think Beyonce would have been better off not advertising her hair care line as Beyonce's hair care line. I think she actually should have distanced herself from the product because I think people were confused when they saw that video of her hairstylist, or maybe it was her mom, I don't remember, washing her hair while advertising the product. She went from being someone who was so secretive and mysterious, under this veil of mystery, to all of a sudden trying to be relatable and goofy, and it came across as inauthentic. Now, don't get me wrong, there's such a thing as being too relatable or overexposing yourself to an audience. So an example of this would be the Kardashians. They expose and exploit everything about their personal lives. And I think as a collective, we can all agree that we do not need to know as much about that family as we do. But to their credit, they've used it and spun it out into successful business ventures. Like Kim, for example, has Skims, which is doing really well. Kourtney has her supplement gummies line, which I think is doing okay. And back when Kylie had her lip kits and back when those were the thing, they were flying off of the digital and physical shelves. Now with Skims, I think the product is actually good. I personally don't own anything from that brand, but I've heard good things. And with Kylie's lip kits about 10 years ago, teens and young women bought into the brand because they bought into Kylie and who she is. So the product itself, from what I heard, because I never purchased one, the product itself wasn't that great, but she was selling her lifestyle and her audience was fully sold. Now, most of us are not celebrities or in the industry as influencers, singers, or actresses, but what if I told you that the same rules that apply to them apply to us? With Beyonce and the Kardashians, it's just on a macro scale, i.e. a world scale. But us everyday it girls have our own worlds, and everything can just be pared down to our own micro scales. So think about the places that you go, the office or your job, social media. Although not a physical place, I would argue is one of the most important places. Places like the gym or your workout classes, public events or spaces like restaurants, bars, concerts, sporting events. So what is it about selective disclosure that is better than moving in silence? Well, in my opinion, selective disclosure is all about balance. It's the practice of being intentional and strategic with what you share, and just revealing enough about yourself to build trust with people. And by build trust, this does not mean being friends with everybody or wanting everyone to be your friend. Actually, it's not about friendship at all. You shouldn't want to be friends with everyone, and everyone shouldn't want to be friends with you, but you should always have people trust you, or to some extent at least. So rather than broadcasting every detail about your life to everyone, either on social media or when you're talking in person, using selective disclosure allows you to decide who gets to see which parts of your life and when. So this is not about oversharing, it's about sharing with discernment, like you're curating your personal story for the right audience at the right time. So I don't know if you guys, when you were back in high school in English or literature class, and the teacher had you read something like an article or an old letter or something, and then the question would be, who was this written for? What was the intended audience? Who was the author speaking to? So it's the same thing with selective disclosure. Who is your audience when you decide to say certain things about your life or showcase certain sides of your personality? Like, you wouldn't act the same way at work with your boss as you do when you're at brunch with your closest girlfriends. You would never discuss your dating life with coworkers, but maybe with your close friends or a sister or something, that's a topic that's up for discussion. So a little bit of a personal anecdote here. I used to hate and really hate, despise the thought of sharing my life on Instagram, since that's the only social media I use. So I've always had an Instagram, but I would never really post on it. And I would think that that would make me superior. Like, yep, that's right, no one knows anything about my life or who I'm with or the places I go or the outfits that I wear. And I used to think that it was a negative thing to have a digital footprint, because even if the stuff that I post is appropriate, I always thought that it could somehow be used against me. But then I thought, what would happen if I actually started posting more? So what really changed my mind is I heard someone one day say, if you don't take control of your image and your digital footprint, especially in this day and age, then someone else will. And that's kind of what made me switch my mindset. I would rather post things myself from my first person point of view than be filmed or photographed in an unplanned manner without my consent and be posted by someone else. So then came the change. If I were dressed up, I would post the outfit I'm wearing. If I went places, I would post the places I was going and the things I was doing. I kind of did a rebrand, so to speak. And nowadays, I only really post on my Instagram stories and not really on my feed too much. That's really, really rare. But I've noticed that ever since I've started posting more, more of my life, the things I like, the places I go, I have felt a noticeable shift in people's attitude towards me in real life. I've noticed that people are more open towards me and even comment on or ask me about the things I post. I'm being invited to more places, to do more things, simply because I'm showing people that I have an exciting, multifaceted life of my own, and honestly, that's what makes people want to be near you. So if I post that I'm in a nice restaurant for dinner, or that I'm at my 9 a.m. yoga class, or that I'm meal prepping for the week, people will think, okay, so she clearly likes to go to nice places, and she also likes to take care of her body. So this helps people put you into a category and think of you in a certain way. But here's the beauty of it. Since it's your social media, which is what I'm talking about right now, which, let's be honest, is where most people will go to see your life, you can choose to project any image you want. And as I'm writing this, I realized that all selective disclosure comes down to is personal branding. That's it. Your brand should be different depending on who you're speaking with and the setting that you're in. At work, you want your brand to be personable but professional, and someone who can be trusted to get the job done. And some people might think that's fake or phony, but it's actually really strategic. You should not act the same way in every single setting. You would just be setting yourself up for failure. Not to harp on the corporate world of it all, but if you work a job where you go into an office, this is, I would guess, where you spend majority of your time, so I think it's worthwhile to touch on. So I've stumbled across videos and TikToks of Black women specifically saying how they find it unnecessary to come across as personable to their coworkers. They would say things like, I hate when they ask me about my weekend because I don't care about how their weekend went. I just want to show up to work, put my head down, and get my job done, and then go home. And I used to agree with the sentiment. What did it matter to people what I did on the weekend? But then it clicked for me. People want to know how to place you and categorize you in their mind, especially if you're a Black woman. Unfortunately, that's just how the way this world is. So the Black women that would operate in that way that I mentioned would also then complain how they were passed up for promotions time and time again, and how the promotion would often go to some other person who's maybe not as good at their job, but has a good relationship with the manager. So all of this comes down to the politics of human behavior. People are naturally curious, and connections require authenticity, or at least a believable level of authenticity. So I realized that by letting others in, even just a little bit, I was giving them permission to connect with me, understand me, and ultimately figure me out. Now, if you were here in person, you would see me putting air quotes around the words authenticity and the phrase figure me out. Let's be clear here. No one should ever be able to 100% figure you out. I am of the belief that everyone, not even the person you're closest to, should know everything about you. Now, this might be a controversial take, but I think that there should be some aspects of yourself that you just keep to yourself. But back to the work and corporate thing, if you're a Black woman who works a corporate job, I can venture a guess that there are not many other employees that look like you, and more specifically, women that look like you, which is what matters to me ultimately. And because of this, you're in a sense encroaching on someone else's territory, and because you're an outsider, and I'm not saying we're outsiders, but consciously or subconsciously, unfortunately, this is how people view it, people are going to want to figure you out as quickly as they can. They want to know what you're going to say when they ask you about your weekend, because they're testing to see exactly what kind of person you are, if you know what I mean. So the human brain likes shortcuts, which is the reason why stereotypes exist. If we can just categorize a certain group of people in our minds and think they all behave a certain way, that'll be less mental energy that we have to use to figure someone out on an individual basis. It helps us make fast decisions. If we see someone and we think we're in danger, it'll help us get to safety quicker. So when they ask you about your weekend, either make something up or say what you actually did. And I'm completely co-signing lying. I do not care. But don't ever say you did nothing. And if you truly did nothing, which I have those weekends sometimes, because sometimes I just need to stay in, just say something along the lines of, this weekend I didn't do much actually. Did some spring cleaning, went to the farmer's market to get some ingredients, and FaceTimed my parents. I know, not the most exciting weekend, but very relaxing. How about you? So, just in that short sentence, I let someone into a few aspects of my personality. Number 1, they can tell that I value cleanliness. Number 2, I value healthy eating or I like to cook. And number 3, I value family. So this comes across much better and more open than just saying, oh, not much, how about you? Because then this will give the person you're speaking to nothing about your personality or your values to grasp onto. So of course, don't say the same thing every Monday when someone asks you, so just switch it up a little. Maybe just say one thing you did, like, oh, I went to this really nice restaurant uptown and I had the best salmon, or whatever. You don't have to disclose that you're actually out on a date and that you kissed the guy after. Nobody needs to know the details. Keep the details out of it and just paint a basic picture. This also lets others ask follow-up questions like, oh, which restaurant were you at? What else was on the menu? Have you been there before? And like I mentioned, if you had a weekend that was not an appropriate thing to say in the workplace, just make something up, but something that would align with the narrative of the personality that you've already been advertising. So let's say you actually went clubbing over the weekend and didn't get back home until 3 a.m. Guilty. But obviously you aren't going to say that. So just say, oh, I had a really lovely weekend. I met a couple of friends over afternoon tea and then tried a new recipe. So this is also why I strongly advise against following coworkers on social media. They do not need to see your life outside of work. That is only going to harm you in the long run. Even coworkers who are close to your age or the same age as you, I would say keep them off of your social media. Keep your work life and your personal life separate. Your coworkers do not need a visual of what you did over the weekend. They can just hear about it on Monday when they ask you, and they'll never know the real truth. So selective disclosure isn't about giving away your secrets or your entire story. It's all about knowing the time and place for each part of your narrative. So here's a challenge I actually have for you. Over the next month, I actually really encourage you to experiment with selective disclosure. So I want you to identify 1 or 2 aspects of your daily routine that you're comfortable sharing, whether that's a picture of your favorite morning ritual, a book that you were deeply moved by or that you're currently reading, or even a picture of a dish that you're proud of that you tried. And then ask yourself, Who in my audience or circle would appreciate knowing this little detail? How can this glimpse of my life foster deeper connection or spark a feeling of trust? Moving in silence might seem safe, but like I said, it often results in isolation. Instead, when you share with discernment, you're not only inviting others to understand you better, but you're also showing them that you're human. Alright, that's it for this video, and I'll talk to you soon, it girls.